Today we're going to take this black, it's a really cool little transparent black that Paul D. Marrais came up with, and I'm going to take and put down just a value sort of study type thing on my painting that's going to just be a base. Take me from my reference picture and then sets the land. I'm not going to do the sky, I just want to do the land. And so I'm going to just do a quick thing. What's really cool about his oil sticks here, this is oil paint, it's called an oil stick, and you can kind of make it into a sharper edge. You can draw with it a little bit. So I'm going to take and go ahead and try to draw in the dark areas. Now I'm going to just take I want to take a sable brush because it's really nice and soft, and I'm just dipping it a little bit into the Turpenoid, and I'm going to just dab it off a little bit just to make sure it's okay. Now you see it's already turning into this nice thin layer. Pull off some of this and get quite a realistic look. Okay, this is day 2 painting wise, and I just wanted to tell you this is the product that I'm using for my painting, the colors, and this is a Paul D. Marrais oil stick. Now oil stick is real oil paints. It has a little more wax in it so it holds together. Now I've taken a razor and cut off the end because I use them in shorter pieces than what it comes in the stick. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I prepare this stick by it develops a skin on it, just like an oil paint does. It develops a skin. Oil paints don't dry, they cure, and it develops a skin. So you take that skin off. I don't take it off the whole thing because I want to hold it in my hand, which is a really cool thing about this kind of oil paint. In some ways it's similar to pastel, which I used to paint a lot and loved it, but I wanted to go to oil paints because you could paint them and you can hang them on the wall, you don't have to frame them. So anyway, this is a white, and I can literally use my hand to start drawing it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just find a color to start with. And so usually I go to the horizon, which in this case, you know, really there's a horizon where your eye goes, but there's the part where the sky meets up with the mountains here. And what I want to point out, which a lot of people may or may not know, but I've never heard anyone talk about it necessarily, but above where the sky meets the mountains, and probably around every object, there's sort of an aura. And if you look at the color really carefully, you'll see a different color just on the outline of that mountain. It's crazy. But anyway, I'm starting with a white, and picking one color at a time. And why I'm starting with the white is because I'm blocking out that little white. I also have picked all my other colors the other day, and so I got them all prepared last night. And some of the colors just aren't going to be as light as what I would like. Okay, so I'm starting with my white, and I'm going to just trail it right here. So our next step is we have put all this paint on. Now we have to tap it in. We got a couple of jobs to do. One, we got to get all of the pieces of canvas covered so that just so that there aren't little bits and pieces of canvas that aren't covered. And we want to get, and we're just going to tap in where the edges of the colors meet to start with, so that we don't overblend. And then later, if we need to, we can come back in with a brush. Alright, so the next thing is the brush, right? Well, so what we'll do is we'll take, I think we'll just start with a sable brush. I've let this painting dry, so it's basically the same process, but it's a little bit different in some significant ways. And the first thing I did was I took looks at it to make sure that everything was accurate or whatever. And of course there's some distortions, but what I've got here is, this is my reference picture here, and I'm looking at this up here. Now I noticed that it's hard to see maybe, but there's more purple than down here, and along with that purple is some teal color. And then on this part here, it's a little more raspberry. This looks a little more tomatoey. So both the purple and the tomatoey color are in there. It's just that they have to mix with some other colors in order for it to work. So, okay, so what I did is that I took some other colors that would round this out, and I put them together on this little palette, and then I roll them around so that I can get some of the paint off onto the palette, and that way I can use a brush if I need to, or I can use a palette knife to apply the paint. In this case I have quite a large areas, so I can use the method I used before, which was just put it in my hand. So one of the neat things is that if you can see where the purple is, you can start to put in some of this. It's just very light teal, but I mean, well, the color is dark, but I'm just putting it in really lightly, and I'm trying to keep track of where I'm at. Some of my design got a little out of whack, which happens all the time. I'm going to stick a little bit of this up in here. And got about, let's see, looks like 5 different colors of in the blue ranges, one of them being a purple, but in case I need to bring it back in. Now what we're going to do is we'll go back to our tapping, and we're going to tap that in just like this, and it makes a really I don't know, it looks like a lot of texture as a cloud would look, so that's really cool. But we're going to keep going with a brush after this like we did the first time. And if you see colors, I mean, my eyes are going back and forth like this. If you see colors that are off a little bit, you can move that paint just a little bit. Some of this looks more diagonal. Go for that. You know. All right, now I'm going to take my brush, and I can take. Last time I used the sable brush, I'm going to use. Oh, I think a little bit. Stiffer of a brush. It's just I'm sure an acrylic, but see, I can move this in and get it real soft looking. That's fun. And you know, I'm not gonna I don't want it to blend 100%. I want it to leave a little bit of this dark and then a little bit of the light, so I'm just dabbling on it. So we're taking a tissue, and when I say tissue, I mean toilet paper, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to pull some of it off. just in the dobbies. And if I need to, I can push it hard, or I can just daub it a little bit. And what it'll do is it'll take some of this other color, this pink, and bring it back out. Only it looks like it's come from the sky. Because, you know, the vapors are everywhere, and some of them pick up the blue, some of them pick up the pink, at least is how the human eye will see it. And so it's kind of a mysterious thing to try to get, but if you just pull some of that out of there, you're going to have a base for the pinks. Okay, and you can stick with the program here. You can see some of these coming up. Let's just pull a little bit more out of it. I'm going to take these guys down here, since I did a couple down that low. All right. And really, that's all there is to these clouds. Okay, we're at the end now, and I'm just going to show a few different techniques for putting the paint down and moving the paint around. So, once again, I've taken the paint and I've rolled them to get some of the paint down onto this palette, and I'll be using a series of brushes and possibly a knife, like a paint knife. I'm going to start, I think I'm going to start with this white and see if I can't get that. I think the white is probably the most important thing. So I'm going to just go ahead and paint it on. I can also take the knife, and the difference really between the painting on with the brush and painting on with the palette knife is that the palette knife lets the paint come on a little bit thicker, and so it looks a little bit richer. You can always brush it out if you want to, and it's just a matter of load the paint on the back of it and touch it or slide it along. So I'm kind of just going. You can put it on there and just drop the knife down a little bit. It's really good. It's really good for getting a sort of a line. And if you leave it, then you're going to have a good amount of paint, you know, very saturated paint, and so that color will be the brightest it can be. Now I kind of goofed, so I'm going to just pull some of it off. It's easy to do that, and that's all I'm really doing. And where it's the brightest, I'm going to leave the paint on the most saturated, and in other places I'm going to put it on and I'm going to brush it in just like the other ones, only with a finer kind of shapes, because it gets real fine when it gets to that sunrise. But that's it. That's all I'm doing.